Okay, here's to hoping nothing freezes. I'm just going to wait for the here we go. Okay, it is starting. I'm just going to put it on mute. It looks like we're coming in loud and clear. Firstly, Sako, thank you so much. They're going to be talking all about branding and marketing, and I'm so excited. I also have a little bit of a funny story to tell. So I think in the title of this as what should I put as an emoji? Because I always put an emoji in the title description for the IndieVerse. And I was like, marketing branding emoji. And rate is this octopus. And I thought that was so like relevant to our discussion today, like with branding and marketing. And I was like, who would have thought that click-through rate is an octopus? Like, I don't get it. Anyway, so that's why we have an octopus in the emojis. Normally it's like totally a pen or something like that, but I thought it was kind of funny. So just to get started, this is the IndieVerse. We talk about all things indie and self-publishing. And Sako, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Howdy, I'm Sako Tumi, also known as Cass Voigt. I write horror, and I'm a witch, and I'm a graphic designer, and sometimes I combine those three things. So if you are looking to market yourself as an author, or you're looking to be a witch or a witch, please drop by my channel. I would love to see you.
So we're at Thursday, November 12th.
I think I'm just like over on YouTube. If people who are watching right now can let us know if we're freezing, that would be great, because I don't think mine are not freezing on YouTube, and it looks a little bit like I'm freezing. So let us know if you're having any issues on your end. I'm really hoping. It looks like I have full bars, but like, who knows? Maybe there's a storm rolling in or something. So the question that I typically always ask folks off is just to talk a little bit about how you got started in writing. So while our topic today is marketing and branding, I would love to hear like your writer origin story.
My writer origin story. So I went to a gifted and talented school, which is like a governor's school, like it's for smart kids. And it's basically for kids who knew how to read before they went into school. And we were writing books in second grade. So that was part of it. And then I started writing for me come like 6th or 7th grade. I was like queen of the short story, and it was very cathartic for me. They were kind of like journal posts, sort of, kind of, but they were always in third person, and like, yeah, it was writing. It was. And then I started role playing by text around the same time, and that helps your writing a lot, because you're writing with other people and you're learning from other people how they write. And so there were some really great writers in the chat rooms that I was learning a lot from. And my parents write, and like, I don't know, I'm just surrounded by it all the time. Like, I didn't choose it. I just kind of fell into it. Right? So
I feel like that's what happens with a lot of folks. They just seem to fall into it. Because I'm coming as choppy. So my next follow-up question to that is, tell us a little bit about what you're working on now. And while you do that, before we get into reset some settings here on my end so that I'm not coming in as choppy. So if you want to tell us a little bit about what you're writing, I will be back in like 2 seconds. Hopefully this will.
Okay. Okay. So this nano,
Can you hear
I
me?
am working on. I can hear you, but there is a delay. Like, yeah. All right. So, oh, there's also probably some background noise on my part, so I apologize for that. I am currently working on 2 projects. One is BC Brown and I are writing a book together, and it is going swimmingly well. In fact, we work on it tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern. That is a thing. And then that's an urban fantasy, supernatural horror sort of situation. And then, which we both write, surprisingly. And then for my Anchor series, I'm writing the first book of my Anchor series as well. I have 100,000 words worth of notes, and I've been sitting on it forever and ever. So I'm writing the books finally. So that's the thing. That is a thing I am doing. Okay, so Keelan is going to restart. That is going to be a thing. I am sorry that there is background noise. That 1, I have laundry going, and 2, my father is having a Buddhist meeting at the same time, and I might take us into the garage just to kind of like adjust for the background noise. There is some roboting. Okay. This chat is much needed. I'm not sure I'll be able to stay for the whole time, but I'll definitely come back for the replay. Awesome. I hope we can actually get to the thick of it before you have to go. Good to see Devin. Good to see Doll. Good to see Ginny. It's good. It's also super good. I just finished. I just released Hope's Chest in September. So that's my debut book. They usually say that you should write your Anchor series first and then you can release willy-nilly. But like this is the perfect time to release like a cyberpunk thriller sort of situation. So the timing just seemed right for Hope's Chest. It just seemed right.
I think I'm back, and I think everything is solved. I just had to really restart some programs. I'm sorry to like jump ship like that.
No, you're so much better now.
Okay, good. Good. I'm so glad. I don't know. It was just like I had nothing open, but I'm sure there were things like running in the background. So I just did a full restart. Anyway, back to the
anyway.
I'm so sorry about that. But hopefully you had time to tell everybody a little bit about what you're writing. And now we can jump into the branding and marketing discussion. If anybody has any questions for Sako while we're going through, please drop them in the chat and we will address all of those at the end. But the first question I had for you, and I know this is something that like when I first started in communications and branding and marketing confused me a little bit, but it was the difference really between, and I know people have different definitions, but like the difference between what you consider branding and what you consider marketing, and then also perhaps how they intersect a little bit.
I think of branding as how the world views you, and then marketing is how you implement that brand. One does not necessarily need the other, but boy, do they help each other out.
For sure. I'm like, it's always so confusing to me sometimes, like hearing those two terms, and then sometimes they get like misconstrued as one or the other. But I really like that. I think that's a really interesting definition of how you put it. So I guess my follow-up to that, because a lot of the times, especially as indie writers, it's like, yes, we want to focus on the writing, and branding and marketing can fall to the background. So in your opinion, like why are those two things so important for authors?
For one, it's to show how professional you are and how serious you are about what it is that you do. And you want people to see who you are on the inside as well as on the outside, right? And if you post stuff willy-nilly and don't quite have like a branding behind your marketing, then you're going to look like a mess.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like, I mean, at least when I look at your branding, it's always so strong, and like you can tell when something is like a Sako Tumi brand. It like you've got the font, you've got the colors. It's like so interesting. So what, I guess, in your opinion, because there's so many different things that we can do, like what would you consider part of an author's brand? Like what comprises of an author's brand? It just seems like this obscure term. I'm building my author brand. So I was wondering if you could like put some things like to you, what does that mean?
To me, it is the things that you would want associated with you, right? So like part of my brand is that I throw tarot. Part of my brand is that I read witchy books. Part of my brand is that I do horror and I do spooky stuff. Like that's just what I do.
Even your intro there is like, so yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important to know what it is that you want, know what it is that people want from you, and to basically connect with people in such a way that like, oh, you do this thing that I am interested in, I will absolutely follow you. And that's really the moral of the story that's going to loop around here in this conversation, is that if you stand up and say, I do these things for these people because this why and this is what they do, like, then people will come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's a lot of like, I think sometimes, especially for authors, and I know me in particular, it's hard to, and it's funny because I do this as like part of my job, but on a personal level, when it's for a brand, for me, it's like, when it's for a brand that's not me, it seems to be really easy. But when it's for me, I find it very difficult to be like, I do X, Y, and Z, and I'm trying to like.
That's
I know we try to do
part,
it the
right?
hard sell, but like, I do X, Y, and Z. It's almost like
that's really the hard. That's the heavy lifting. That's the
Yeah.
heavy lifting when it comes to branding. Absolutely.
And it's funny because like I feel like I do it so easily like for work, but that's because they like it's their brand, if that makes sense.
They have already figured out that stuff out. They've put it in a book for you. The standards guide, right? Like, I'm sure you have a standards guide that you often like, here are the fonts that you can use, here are the colors you can use, here's the kind of language you can use.
Exactly. And also like even if we're changing and defining that, it's almost like when you're developing when you're developing a personal brand, it's personal to you. When it's not, when it's like a company, it's like, oh, it's the company, you know?
And when you become, Savvy is an excellent example of this, but when you become a company,
yeah,
you know, like what was very personal for you becomes very public. Yeah. And you have to be prepared for that eventuality. If you're on YouTube to build your brand, then you have to be prepared for it to go public, for it to go viral at some point.
Yeah, for sure. And all of Savvy, I love all of Savvy stuff.
Yeah, me too.
For anybody who doesn't know, we're talking about Savvy Writes Books, amazing channel. Also, she just released a
Savvy Business Owner. Is
so good.
Amazing book.
It's so good.
It's not a how-to, but it is a really great insight into what actually goes on when you go to make an LLC.
Agreed. It was a really interesting read to follow somebody's kind of like full journey. So my follow-up question kind of to the what is a part of the author's brand and why is marketing so important? I'm kind of going to break these up into like marketing and then branding, but what marketing techniques have you found work best for you? Like there's so many different things. There's like newsletters and social media and ads. Like I'm curious to know what works best for you or what you enjoy doing most.
Honestly, interaction is the best. I know they say you should have an Instagram and you should have a Facebook and you should have a Twitter and you should have a TikTok and all of that stuff. And honestly, you only need one, and you need to go all in. Like, go in for you. And if you go in for you and also be like, oh, I also do this thing, then people are like, oh, my friend does this thing and I want to support my friend. So really engage with people first and then be like, oh yeah, I also do this thing.
Mm-hmm. I love to hear that, because I used to be of the mindset, like, try and do it all. And dropped Twitter for that reason. I was like, nah, I don't need this.
Yeah. Twitter is good for some things, but I feel like not so much for books.
Yeah, I feel like there's a big like book Twitter, but I don't know if it actually.
It's all traditional. It is.
Yeah.
But if you're self-published like I am, I feel like there's a disconnect.
I kind of agree, because I feel like it's used for traditional publishing folks to find one another, but for the indie, like, I've found more indie authors through Instagram than through
Instagram. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've had the same experience. Also, Twitter just makes me angry, so like.
That's understandable.
But I love what you said about like having. Like it's the interaction with folks, because I was actually just talking to somebody else recently on the IndieVerse, Justin Fike, and he said it was like the connections, and it's like the same when it comes to marketing. I think it was Justin who said that, and he said it was the connections, and like it's interesting to hear people who are real good at this stuff say it's all about like those genuine kind of connections and interactions that you're having with other folks, because like you said, it's so easy to get lost in all of the other stuff.
Especially if you're trying, oh my gosh, if you're trying to do content for every one of those avenues of social media, then you're just gonna, I mean, that's a job in and of itself. You mentioned it before, like marketing is a job in and of itself. I happen to be lucky in that that's what my degree is in.
Mm-hmm.
So like I already have that skill set before I started writing. So I already knew how to format my book before I knew, like, before I had the content to apply it to.
Yeah. I feel like having a background in marketing, communications, whatever it may be, is like certainly a plus for sure as an indie author.
I noticed that with a lot of people where they have like a side thing with music or with audio or video editing and tutorials and stuff like that. And I love when we can connect professional to professional, like business to business.
Yeah.
Because some really great projects can come out of that.
Definitely. And I've seen like through AuthorTube and through like YouTube, people bartering and say, hey, I'll trade you this service for this service. And I think that's really, really cool. Like the B2B interactions that we're seeing for sure.
Yeah.
So beyond like marketing techniques that you really like, the interaction sounds unbelievable, and it's what I keep hearing echoed. But a huge part of marketing and like being an indie author are book launches, and book launches reign supreme when it comes to the success, I suppose, of like a book. Sure, there's backlist stuff you can do, but the book launches are like,
that's the be all end all.
Yeah. So I was curious, like, how do you approach a book launch, or how would you propose that somebody approach a book launch?
As soon as you know when you're going to launch it, start advertising. I would say 6 months before, start mentioning it in your newsletter. If you don't have a newsletter, that's how you start your newsletter is, hey, I'm going to do a book launch in 6 months. And
strong to start on for a newsletter. I love it. Yeah.
And And then I lose my train of thought entirely. We were talking about
mentioning book launches and mentioning starting early.
Starting early, and then 3 months out, do your book trailer. Start releasing little side things that kind of like lead up to it. Like if you have character concepts, like drawings, or you have music soundtracks or playlists or anything like that, that's when you get to hype people up. Mm-hmm. And then once you actually have your party, now what used to happen before in the before times is that we would make a deal with like a local bookstore, and do a signing and have a party there and stuff like that. Well, now that we are in the after times, a lot of that is happening virtually, right? So I think, again, Savvy is an excellent example of this. Basically converting what she was doing in person and converting that to a virtual space. But that's when you want to do your giveaways, and I recommend having freebies that you give away for like trivia or just like for people showing up. They like do a timed thing where it's a sweepstakes or something like that. And like I did book plates. Mm-hmm. and bookmarks and stuff like that. The bookmark is your business card. So consider bookmarks with all of your information on it. Because people aren't going to keep your business card like your normal 2x3 business card. That's for like construction workers and stuff. For you, I recommend postcards or bookmarks or book plates or stuff like that would have your information on it that people can find useful.
I was just looking for my little business card holder because I'm a business card hoarder. Like I have them, and when I get them, what I do is I write where I met the person on it so that I don't forget if I ever have to reach out to them again. But like honestly, I never flip through my business cards. Like,
right, exactly. And I have space on my business card where I'm like, this is where you met me. I'm the one who wore the funny hat, like stuff like that, so that people remember where they saw me.
Mm-hmm. I really like how you broke down for the book launches, like the virtual versus in person. Things are much different now, I suppose. With
so Doll makes a really good point, where she says she has a lot of trouble with this because she's utterly non-material. That's why you have your cover image, your profile images, any sidebar stuff, any banners that you want people to share. The social media and blog images are so important, especially if you don't have a business card. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically do like a Facebook cover image that's set up like a business card. It has all your information on it. It has all your graphics and stuff on it. And don't be afraid to design it. Like, especially when it comes to Facebook, like, don't be afraid to like go balls to the walls with your graphics. Mm-hmm.
That's a really cool suggestion, because you're right. Like, if you put your information on those pieces of graphics, like if you're not going to be giving away like physical materials, then it's on the digital materials. And going back to kind of the interactions that you mentioned earlier, if you're connecting with people and interacting with people, they'll be willing to share these things. People generally are. They're excited for book launches. So like, yeah. I have never thought of that before, putting like the contact information right on my Facebook cover page. Like, I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah. Be careful not to do ads in your cover image. Facebook is really like about that. But if you're just like doing your contact information, It's like, what social media are you active on? Even if you're on Facebook, you can be like, I have a YouTube and I have a Behance and I have a Goodreads, and all of showing where you are on the internet is integral.
For sure. Moving beyond kind of like book launches, and I feel like it's an indie author thing, but this is a thing why people go the traditional route. But there's some people who still want to be indie authors that don't necessarily want to do the marketing and all of those things themselves. So I was curious, like, if indie authors don't want to do their own marketing or graphics or whatnot, like, are there options for people to outsource this kind of stuff?
Absolutely. There are people like me who do it. I work for barter, so I will help people with their branding and for whatever it is that you do. And then, especially for authors. And then BC Brown is excellent at marketing, which means she's excellent at actually implementing that branding and letting the world know, hey, there's this person. You should look at their stuff. That's kind of her basketball court. And let's see. There are a slew of designers and stuff that are on YouTube alone, that I'm sure, just like your book covers, right? Book covers are definitely a part of your brand. And people go to book cover designers, and you can base your brand out of your book covers. If you end up doing your book covers first, great example, excellent example. Have your book covers done. You can have your book covers done first by the designer, and then you can jump off of your book covers for your identity.
Yeah,
just like Keelan did.
And that's like, I learned that kind of along the way, because I think one of the things that personally I had to like reconcile in my head with myself is that it, like, and I think I asked you and BC this. I was in one of your live streams, and for those in the who are watching right now who might not know, BC Brown is another person on AuthorTube, and I was watching one of your live streams, and I asked the question: does the brand that you create for your books have to align with your brand as an author? Because I think
yes.
And yeah, so that was the answer you gave. And I think for me, what I learned was like, I write epic fantasy adventure, and my brand definitely does not scream epic fantasy adventure. So I'm trying to slowly like inch my way towards that. But that is something that I learned from you and BC. And actually, you know what? That's a good question. I didn't send you this question, but like, why, in your opinion, do like the brands you create for your book and your brand as an author kind of have to? Because
your books are part of your brand, right?
Yeah.
And when you're an author, like, that's the first thing they see of you, right? So they're going to expect to see more of you. Like, I recommend putting an ad for yourself in the last page of your book, like in the back cover or something like that. Like, if you want to see more, you can check out my website at blah, blah, blah.com. And Doll is being sweet. If we get back to in-person events, the virtual aspect of book launches should still stand just behind in-person events. If you can do both, oh my God, do both.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think, that's definitely something I learned from you and BC, just because I have had not a little bit of trouble. It's not trouble, but like, people will say, people don't necessarily expect me to be an epic fantasy author. So trying to make that a little bit more clear.
Right.
So the next question I have for you is kind of, switching over a little bit to like your preferences when it comes to oh my God, marketing and branding. I like combined those words in my head. What are your favorite and least favorite parts of marketing and branding? So I'm just curious, like, what's your favorite thing to do more technically, and what's your least favorite thing to do more technically?
I love actually making the graphics. I'm a graphic designer, right? So the book covers, the social media, different, like headers and user pictures and stuff like that. Those are my favorite things to do. And then the least favorite is, I really hate typesetting, but what do I not like about marketing? I don't like Facebook's ad and noticeability like algorithm right now. It is garbage.
Also so unclear. Like I don't know who created the ad platforms for Facebook, and Google ads have very similar kind of like ad structures when it comes to their platforms. And I'm like, this is the most, like, it doesn't have to be this complicated. Why is it so complicated?
Even if you're on Facebook, I recommend having a page, but don't put a lot of stock into it, because you basically have to pull out ads for people who have liked your page to see your post.
It's literally pay for play, Facebook. Yeah.
So just use your personal account. Don't bother. I mean, like, have the page just to be like, hey, you can find me on the internet, but and post on there every once in a while, but don't expect people to interact.
Yeah, I found that like, because I manage also Facebook pages beyond just my author Facebook page, but for other brands and stuff. And discoverability, if you're not paying for ads and you have a Facebook page, is really difficult. It's
really difficult.
Yeah. Also, the Facebook ads platform is the bane of my existence. I am like, can this not be more? I don't know why it's not more straightforward.
What is it more straightforward? Sorry, I missed it.
The Facebook ads platform. It's like the Facebook Business Manager platform and ads platform is just like not user friendly whatsoever.
It's not.
Yeah.
Boost this post, right? Boost this post.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I would agree. I Facebook, dealing with Facebook is difficult. A follow-up question kind of to that is, what is the best piece of marketing advice that anybody has given you, or that someone has given you?
I have to think about that. The best piece of advice I've ever gotten was the timing, and like basically the times that you post things matters. And like what day, what time of day, to figure out what kind of audience that you want to approach, and you got to interact with that audience. Know your audience. Holy cannoli, know your audience. That is the best advice I can give.
And so a little bit of like follow-up question on that. So how do you go about, like, for somebody who's new and getting started to all of this, how can they go about getting to know who their audience is and who they might be trying to target?
Really? I know a lot of authors that are like, I'm my target audience. And no, you can't do that. That's not how that works. However, you can make up a character that has all of those interests. And so once you figure out your ideal, the person that you are aiming at regarding your business, you can actually start to figure out where you would find those people. And then once you find those people, like groups on Facebook, that is the bee's knees right now. So figuring out where you're going to find those people, they exist. You might be like, she has blue hair and one leg and a gold eye and a green eye, and that person exists. I promise you that person exists. So you just got to figure out where those people are going to be and then go be there and interact with them.
I think that's great advice. And I think like we use that, like businesses use that all the time where they like actually define who, like, here's our like hypothetical person that we're trying to like market to.
Who's your hypothetical person? Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously like not every single person is going to be that exact person, but it helps you focus, I suppose.
I learned a harsh lesson over the summer where everybody who likes books is not your audience.
Yep, this is true. Yeah, very true.
Because I aimed my ad at people who likes books and would be interested in a book launch, and it kind of bit me in the butt because my ads were basically spamming people who liked books, and that's not what I wanted. So that's something I'm still figuring out.
Yeah. Ad targeting is definitely difficult, and it's easy to either go too broad or too niche, where you're like not reaching anybody because it's way too niche, or you're reaching way too many people because it's too broad. And that's
you can start kind of broad, like being on YouTube, for instance, right? You can kind of start kind of broad and then start to whittle it down and whittle it down and whittle it down until you figure out that, hey, my niche is witchy stuff, right? Like witchy books and cards and, you know, stuff like that. Knowledge, right, is my thing. And it took a lot of, I mean, I've had this account since like 2005. And I didn't figure out what I wanted to do with it until April of this year. So it took me a long time to figure out what my niche was.
Yeah, it takes time. And I definitely think it's easy to underestimate how much time thinking through all of these things will take, and how much trial and error.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when it comes to ads. And then I by no means proclaim to know much about ads at all, because I've run ads at $5 a day that have worked really well.
Really well.
And then as soon as you scale, it just crashes and burns.
If you up the scale, it crashes and burns. Absolutely. Yeah. Especially if you try your niche. If you whittle it down and you try your niche and you throw a bunch of money at it, it will just spam those people. And that's not what you want.
Yeah. And then
learning how to tame the beast is my current path. Yeah.
And it comes back to, again, like the knowing your niche and like trying to find that audience size that's whether too big, too small, whatever it may be. I just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions for Sako, please drop them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. I only have a couple questions. Actually, I have 2 questions left. So if anybody wants to ask a question, please do drop them in the chat and we'll get to them after this. But my first question, I'm going to break this question into 2, actually. Okay. If you could go back to the moment before you hit publish on your first book and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be? And the reason I'm splitting this in 2 is because one of them will be one piece of marketing advice, and then the other is one piece of marketing and branding advice, and then the other is one piece of just like general publishing advice.
The publishing advice is make sure you read your final copy before you hit publish. I know it's easy to look at that like InDesign file or that PDF and be like, okay, it's fine, and ship it off. But read it one more time. I found out the hard way that InDesign does not export EPUBs very well. It shuffles the pages for some reason.
Oh no. InDesign is a beast. InDesign is a beast.
I love InDesign. I love it, but I haven't figured out how to fixed this part yet. So
Yeah.
is it all right to take alone time? Yes, of course. Kind of like what I'm doing these days. I don't think it's all right, but boy, do I need it. Well, I recommend doing a program like Hootsuite or Buffer. Buffer is free, by the way. It lets you do up to 3 posts, I think, ahead of time, or 3 days worth of posts. I can't remember which. I went ahead and paid for it, so you can do as many posts as you freaking want. So you can queue up stuff. Another person that I strongly recommend listening to regarding branding and implementing that branding is Angela Ann.
Mm.
Her Instagram game is on point.
Oh yeah, and her TikTok too is yeah.
And she breaks it down for you. She has videos where she breaks that down for you, and it is so good. It is such good advice. And she basically talks about how she takes like a long weekend and she makes all of her content and then she just queues it up.
Yeah.
So she doesn't even have to be at the computer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the scheduling programs, I mean, I'm speaking to this completely theoretically because I don't use them for personal things. I use them because I do have a day job. So I use them at work,
Right.
schedule posts, but I don't personally use them. But that is my intent to one day get there because then you can just do it all at once and then take the breaks.
Because as we've said before, marketing is a job in and of itself. It takes a lot of mental power and it takes a lot of time to actually make the content, which is the whole thing about like, first you got to write the book so that you know what you're selling, right? So if you can kind of like come up with marketing things as you're writing the book, that will make the transition so much easier. And then in the grand scheme of things, when the book is already out, you can make your profiles kind of like a secret club and have like your concept stuff and your playlists and all that stuff that you used to hype your stuff. That is stuff that you can just like have on your profile like all the time.
It's a really great piece of advice to like pull it as you're like writing, because all those quotes, like I remember going back into my first book when I was doing promotion for it and be like, okay, what quotes can I pull for the back cover? What quotes can I pull for like little blurbs? And I was like, I never even thought, even for this book that I have coming up, I never even thought to do that on the go because that's such a good piece of advice. Then you don't have to do it later. It's already there.
It's already there.
Yeah. That's yeah.
One thing that I find helpful on NaNoWriMo's site is when you go to make your project, it asks for an excerpt.
Mm-hmm.
And that I usually pick whatever it is that sticks out to me the most on my outline. And I kind of like fluff it up a little bit so that maybe it could be an excerpt of the book. And like that kind of acts as part of your branding, right? So that is something that people see from your profile like immediately, even though you're like behind the curtain, like, you know, pulling levers and and yanking on chains and stuff like that.
For sure. But Dal, just to go back to, I guess, your question a little bit, like, yes, definitely take time off if you need time off. That is.
Hiatuses are also a thing.
Yeah.
But let your audience know that you're taking the hiatus.
Yeah, good point. Just say, like, I'm taking a hiatus. I'll be back in a month.
Yes. I recommend, because otherwise people will forget about you.
Mm-hmm.
If you say, hey, I'm going to be back, then there's more of a chance that people will expect you in a certain amount of time that you have designated. I recommend, if you can designate the time, like say I'll be back in a week or I'll be back in a month, like you said, then like be true to your word. Like come back when you say you're going to come back.
Yeah, for sure. But we definitely like, I know we all need a break sometimes. Things
We
get
all need a break sometimes.
life
Yeah.
takes over for sure. Does anybody have any last questions for Sako? Sako, I can turn it over to you to talk about if there's anything we missed in terms of marketing and branding that you think is super important that you want to just like convey. Please feel free. And I'll just, prompt everybody in the chat. If you have any more questions, just let us know.
The last thing I think I'm going to talk about is book formatting. The inside of the book is just as important as the cover. This is true for graphic novels. This is true for novels. So I recommend don't format it yourself. Get a professional. Sage Gordon-Davis is an excellent example. She has for solo restriction. Sage Gordon-Davis or myself or BC Brown has the know-how, but she's been really busy lately, so I probably would skirt around that one. But if you are interested in book formatting, there are certain elements that should be on every page. And there should be stuff in the beginning of the book, and there should be stuff at the end of the book. So pay attention to the inside of the book just as much as you pay attention to the outside of the book. Yes, sensational sage, absolutely.
Yeah, I see that. Devin's comment, sensational sage. That's great. We don't hear about formatting too often. It seems to be something that tends to fall to the wayside. But you're right. If you pick up a book and it's not like properly formatted on the inside, the first thing you do at a bookstore is you pick up the book, you'll look at the cover, you'll look at the back, and then you'll like flip through. And so
I open to the middle of the book.
Yeah.
I don't read the first page. I don't read the ending. I open the middle of the book and see where the pacing is at. And what kind of story is unfolding at the midpoint, right? So
yeah,
I think it shows how professional you are if you actually have it formatted, because like I said, otherwise you're going to look like a mess. And if you look like a mess, you're not going to look professional.
Yeah. That's so funny. You jump to the middle. I always, my instinct whenever I open a book is I always flip through it, and I have no idea why I do this, but I always read the acknowledgements before I read the book. I have no idea why. It's like it's a weird habit I have. Before I even read the book, I always read the acknowledgements.
That is a big thing about connection too.
Yeah, maybe. I like to read. I don't know. I like to read the
about relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's so funny. I never thought of it that way, but I really enjoy it.
I think also because the acknowledgements also make the author human.
Yeah, maybe that's
like
probably
you remember it's not created by an AI. You remember that it's actually a person behind it's the same with the author blurb on the inside of the cover, right? So just remind people that you are a people, you are a person, and not a robot.
Yeah, people tend to like people.
People tend to like people.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sako, for joining today. This was so lovely and such a great conversation. And I'm so sorry about my technical difficulties at the beginning. But before we go, I'm going to turn it over to you to promote whatever you want to promote. All of Sako's links can be found down in the description box below for anybody watching live, for anybody watching in the future. But yeah, I'll turn it over to you. Just do it this way.
Howdy howlers, it's Sako Tumi, also known as Cass Voigt. On November 21st, Savvy Writes Books is having a small business expo, and yours truly will be Sako Studios in the Artist's Alley, which will be at 2:00 Eastern. Please come by and see what it is that I do when I'm not writing.
That's so fun. I didn't know that was happening. I can't wait now. That's so exciting. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to episode now 19 of the IndieVerse, which is very exciting. We are getting up there. Episode 20 will be happening sometime soon. Not exactly sure when. But if not, it'll be happening sometime between now and Tuesday. And if not between then, it'll be on Tuesday. So just a heads up, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. And I'm going to sign off now. And just so everybody knows, I will go ahead and cut off all of the technical difficulties at the beginning so we can just start right off with that. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, and talk to you later. Bye.